It's been a while since my last Planets of the Apes video, but I'm back with a new look at the Beneath the Planet of the Apes figures that have recently been released from Mego. For those who aren't aware, last year in 2021, Mego teamed up with Topps to release an exclusive set of action figures based on the Planet of the Apes license. They did a number of releases that were exclusive to the US market, and then in 2022 they've released variants on the European market, which they're saying are exclusive and limited to 1,000 units each. Now then, if you're curious to know what the original Topps exclusive versions look like, we can see obviously Brent was in his space outfit, his astronaut costume, and the mutant leader, as we see here, obviously is the mutant reveal version of the leader with the scarred face underneath. I don't have either of these yet, but if I'm able to get my hands on them, I will do a video in the future. But for now, let's start with the Brent figure. Obviously, this variant is Brent in his sort of savage loincloth version, I suppose, for lack of a better description. The packaging, of course, will be very familiar to anyone who's collected any of the recent Mego Planet of the Apes figures that have been available over the last few years. It is, of course, that wonderful image of the Statue of Liberty, and behind the figure we have the image of an ape's face, which looks really good. I've always really loved this artwork. It has of course been used on DVDs and Blu-ray packaging across the years, and it always looks really evocative and really good. This image is used pretty much for all of the Planet of the Apes figures, so it is pretty standard, but I think it looks really good and very presentable and perfectly captures the essence and feeling of these films, so I'm very happy with this. When we look at the reverse of the packaging, we have this production still here from the film Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I think this is really cool. Overall, I'm actually really pleased to have the Beneath the Planet of the Apes represented. It often feels like this film is kind of forgotten or ignored by fans, and I really like it. I happen to have a real strong soft spot for this particular entry in the film series. Now, for anyone who hasn't had any of the new recent Mego releases, the first thing you're going to notice with this figure is that it has a brand new body mold and brand new articulation. And of course, this is the first time we've seen the character of Brent in the 8-inch scale, so this head sculpt is also brand new, and I have to say, I think they've done a pretty good job with this likeness. Again, we have to keep in mind that this is Mego. The likenesses tend to be pretty soft in this scale, but I think they've done a really good job here. I think there's a clear attempt to really up their game when it comes to capturing the likeness and the details, and I think there's some real nice paint apps here, particularly in the hair. We can see there's a couple of different colours and shade, which looks really good. Although it's very simple, I really like this outfit as well. I like that they haven't just recycled the outfit that we saw with the Taylor figure. This outfit is unique and distinctive to Brent, which is really cool, and I think it looks pretty good. He also has this sort of leather strap around his neck and a sort of a leash, I suppose. It's a nice detail, it's a nice thing to have. I think it looks pretty good. Again, you can see that in a bit more detail here. I think it does the job. I think it looks pretty effective. You'll also notice that he also has brand new sculpted hands as well. I really like these hands. They feel a lot more authentic, a lot more lifelike, I suppose, for lack of a better description. We can see the individual fingers and of course the pose and the way to be able to hold and grasp things a lot better than the traditional hands that we used to get on Megos. One of the few things that has been recycled on this figure though is the slippers, the rubber slippers that we can see on the feet there. The other recycled piece is the rifle that we can see here. We've seen this before with previous Ape releases. It's really cool to have. It's pretty accurate to what we see on screen. There's not much detailing on it, but it looks pretty nice. The only issue I have with it is that sadly, we still can't really get our figures to hold them properly. It was always a struggle with the original hands. I thought these new hands might be able to accommodate them a little bit better, but sadly no. The barrel of this gun and the handle are just too thick and too chunky, and you can just about squeeze them into position, but you're never going to be able to hold it in both hands, sadly. Now, I did mention a brand new articulation scheme. This might be upsetting for traditionalists who really like the traditional approach with the rubber bands to Megos, but for people like me, I really welcome the improved articulation. This is really fantastic stuff. So of course he does have a swivel at the neck still, so his head can turn 360 degrees, but he has these wonderful ball joints in his shoulders, which means that his arms can be posed up and out at pretty much any angle you want, which is great. He's also got a pin swivel at the elbow, meaning that lower arm can be rotated right the way around and again hinged to 90 degrees. There's another pin swivel at the wrist, so of course the hand can rotate and hinge forwards and backwards. There's the standard ball joint in the abdomen area, so of course he can can rotate from side to side, he can bend forwards and backwards, and lean left and right. There's those ball joints in the hips, so the legs kick out to the side, they kick forwards, they kick backwards, and then there's another pin swivel at the ankle. So again, that lower leg can hinge to 90 degrees, but also swivel left and right as well. Brent's extra lucky because he gets some extra articulation in the ankles, meaning that his foot can hinge forwards and backwards, but also swivel from side to side. All in all, I have to say, I think this version of Brent is really successful. I think it's great to have Brent in the collection at all. I think they've done a really nice job of their head sculpt. I love the improved articulation. I think they've done a good job of the costume, and he even comes with that accessory rifle as well, which is brilliant. So all in all, I really like this figure. So, moving on, let's look at the Mutant leader next. As we can see, it is a standard packaging. There's nothing really different here to differentiate him from Brent in terms of the packaging, other than the figure himself. But when we flip the card over, we have another fantastic image from the film. I think this looks really good. I really like the use of the background they've chosen here as well. It's colourful, it's bright, it's authentic, and it looks really good on display. Now, of course, this is the unscarred version, or the masked version of the Mutant leader. In terms of the costume and presentation, it is pretty simple and pretty bland in the main, but it looks pretty authentic to what we see on screen, which is great. Once again, the head sculpt, in my opinion, is pretty good, really, for Mego and what I expect from Mego. I think they've done a pretty decent job of capturing the likeness of the actor, and I apologise because this isn't the best image to compare and contrast against, but I think, you know, there's enough detail here, and the paint apps are fairly nice. But obviously, with that skull cap in particular, it does make the figure look a little bit bland. The all-in-white robe doesn't really do it any favours either, but I do like that there are multiple layers and there's extra texture to this outfit. If we lift up the arm, for example, we can see that there's actually a bodysuit underneath. Again, it's white, but it's nice that there's extra material being used here, that there's a layer and a depth and an extra texture to this figure, which is cool. The other criticism I would have, though, of this figure is the cross on the chest there. It's been sewn in with a bit of metallic material. It looks kind of dull, it's not really very detailed. Obviously, it is a very small feature on the actual costume in the film, but here it just looks like a big, thick strip of silver, and probably not the best tailored either. Those robes cover the whole figure, of course, but again, if we lift the bottom skirt up there, we can reveal, of course, that there is that underneath bodysuit, which looks pretty cool. But if we lift up the leg of that, we will also see that this is a reuse of the Star Trek boots that we've seen on the Star Trek Megos for some years, which also means there is no articulation in the feet on this particular figure. All in all then, a nice pair of figures, certainly both welcome additions to the line. For me particularly, I'm really pleased to have Beneath the Planet the Apes represented in my Planet the Apes collection now, which is fantastic. Of the two figures, my personal favourite is Brent. I think they've done a really fantastic job with this figure. I really like pretty much everything about it. I can't really fault it at all. I think the Mutant leader, on the other hand, is well intentioned. I think they've done a pretty decent job with it, but there is this feeling that it is a little bit disappointing, a little bit bland. It's not the most exciting costume in the world. It's not the most exciting Mego figure in the world, and of course when you have the variants being unmasked, the sort of the scarred mutants underneath, that variant of course is out there. That would definitely be my preference because it's a little bit more interesting visually, but this one is still certainly welcome. It just tends to leave me a little bit more cold because it just doesn't have that extra detail and fun element to it. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.